Hi there, welcome back. In this lesson, you will learn how to download, configure and use the Oracle SQL Developer software. Actually, this software is a free tool that simplifies working with SQL in an Oracle database. So, this lecture is needed if you install the database directly into your computer. If you use the VirtualBox option or Oracle Live SQL option, you can skip this lecture since you don't need to watch it. So first, you need to download the Oracle SQL Developer. To do that, let me open up the browser first and type in download Oracle SQL Developer and hit search. You will see the Oracle SQL Developer downloads by oracle.com link here. Just click on that. Like in the Oracle database downloads, this page layout may change in the future as well. But you can find the related page easily in this case as well. When you get to such a page, you will see some different versions of the SQL Developer. If your computer has a Windows operating system with 64 bits, I recommend you to download the Windows 64-bit with JDK included. In this way, you will not have any Java problems, because in the other ones you may have sometimes. If you use a Linux operating system, then you can use the Linux version of it. Since my PC is Windows 64-bit, I will download the Windows 64-bit version. So I just click on the download link or icon here. The rest is the same. You should check the license agreement checkbox and click on download. Then you will need to sign in and the download will automatically start. To save some time, I've already downloaded and extracted this file. You can extract it to anywhere, but it will be easier to reach if you extract it to your desktop, as I have already done here. So let's open it. Now, the only thing you need to do is just click on the SQL Developer.exe file and run it. Perfect. This is how the SQL Developer tool looks like. The first thing that we will do is creating a connection for the HR user. To connect to the database, we need to have a working database connection. There are two ways of doing that. The first one is we right-click on the connections here and click on New Connection option. Or the second and simpler way is just click on this plus sign here. Both of them are the same, it's up to you. So let's do that. In the new window here, we need to write our connection name first. As we're going to use the HR schema in our lectures, we will write HR here. You can write any name here, it's not so important, but I recommend you to give a meaningful name. For example, by writing HR here, it will be easier to understand which connection it is. Alright, you can pick a color for your connection by clicking on the button here. It's optional, you can skip that if you want. I personally select red for the connection to the production database at work. This allows you to easily differentiate on which connection you connected with. But I will select green here since this is a test database connection. So you can select any color you like here. It is here in this version, but its place may change depending on the version of the SQL Developer. The second thing is writing a username. The schema that we will use in our lectures is HR, so you need to write HR here. Now we will write a password for our connection. As you remember, we set our password as lowercase HR in the previous lecture. I need to say something important here. The passwords are case sensitive in the Oracle database. So be careful on writing lowercase to avoid invalid password errors. So I simply write HR in lowercase letters here. And do not forget to check the Save Password option here, because Otherwise, you will need to write the password each time you connect with that user. So let's do that. The next important thing here is the connection type. I will explain two ways of creating a connection here. The first one is the basic connection type. So I don't change anything here for now. If the connection type is basic, you will see the host name, port, SID, and service name areas here. Since you installed the database into your local PC, the host name will be localhost and the port number will be 1521 by default. So there is no need to change anything here. We can connect with the SID, which stands for the service ID, or service name here. Connecting with the service name will be easier for you, so I select the service name radio button here. Now you know that the HR user is reachable in our pluggable database. So here we need to write the pluggable database name that we created. So I write ORCL PDB here. If you did not change it while installing the database, you can write the same name. Otherwise, you need to write the name of your pluggable database here. Alright, so let's test if we did everything correctly. Perfect. As you can see, the status is success. So we can connect to the database with the HR user now. But there is one last thing that you need to do. You need to save your connection now to ensure it is permanently stored. So to do that, we simply hit the save button here. Great. As you can see on the left hand side, the new connection we just created is listed under the connections area. Alright. Now I want to explain the two more users here in case you may need to use them later. They are the system and SYS users. I don't want to go details now, but I want to explain them basically. The system user is a normal user having a DBA privilege. It's a powerful user, so you can do so many things with the system user. And the SYS user is the most powerful user or the highest privileged user in the Oracle database. It is a special user in the Oracle database which stores so many data and statistics about the database system. But I don't recommend you to change any object that these users have. It might cause critical problems. But you can make some certain operations like creating a user, changing the database parameters, etc. So now I will show you how to connect to these users in case you may need them. To do that, you can close that window and open it again by clicking on the plus sign here as we did before. But there is no need to do that. This window will not override the HR user if you change the connection name here. It will create a new one instead. So now let's try to connect with the system user first. And write system in the username area. As you remember, we typed 123 for the password of our database while installing it. So it is the password of the system user. So I write 123 here. The rest is the same. The role is default, save password is checked, connection type is basic, and the connection details are the same. So let's test it before we connect. Perfect. As you can see, the connection status is success. Now you can save and connect to it. But before saving it, I want to show you how to connect with another connection type. So I click on the connection type list box here. As you can see, there are a lot of ways to connect to the database. But most of them are so advanced, and you don't need to know all of them for now. The only one we are interested in now is the TNS here. So let's select it. Actually, the TNS has the same data with the basic connection type. But instead of writing it manually here, there is a tnsnames.ora file in the database and it stores this connection information. In this way, you just select the connection type as TNS and select a network alias here. And you will connect to your database in this way in your business. So let's click on the network alias here. As you can see, there are 3 network aliases here. Actually, it can be more. But what we are interested in now is the ORCL, which is the name of our container database name, as you remember. The name is ORCL because, as you remember, we specified our container database name as ORCL. If you wrote another name, you will be seeing that name here. If you cannot see your container database name, that means you did something wrong or your database is not running now. Just go to the services in your operating system and be sure that all Oracle services are running. Let's check mine together now. As you can see, my Oracle services are running. If yours are stopped, just right-click and start it. Now let's close it and turn back to the SQL developer. So I select it and test it. Perfect. As you can see, the status is success. You can pick a different color for this user if you want to. So we can save it now. As you can see, it appeared in the connections area. Great. Now let's connect to the SYS user. Actually, we can call it as sys user. So I changed the connection name with SYS, username with SYS, and password is 123 again. This time I need to change the role because, as I said, the SYS user is the highest privileged user and it needs to connect with the sysdba role. So let's select it. As you can see, it succeeded again, so let's save it. Perfect. So can we connect with the HR user using the TNS connection type? Let's try. So I replaced the connection name with HR. The username is HR again, and the password is HR but in lowercase characters. And I need to change the role to default again because HR does not have a sysdba role. The connection type is TNS and network alias is ORCL here. So let's test it. As you can see, it says invalid username password, but I'm sure I typed the username and password correctly. So that's not the reason. The reason of this error is we tried to connect to the container database and the container database does not have the HR user. So if you could connect with the HR user by using the basic connection type, there is no need to follow the next steps I will show now. If you could not, you can try this method. So what we need to do here is I need to open up the tnsnames.ora file. So you will find that folder where your database is installed. As you remember, I installed it in Oracle app folder under C drive. So if you cannot remember where your database is installed, you can check the Q&A lecture to learn how to find it. So let's open it. Here, I open the folder starting with the Windows something, because our database is installed in this location. Here, I open up the network folder and the admin folder. Perfect. Now I see the tnsnames.ora file. Let's open it with a text editor. As you remember, there were 3 options in the network alias area in the SQL developer. And we see these options here. Listener underscore ORCL, ORCLR underscore connection underscore data, and ORCL. So these options are read from this file. So if we add another entry here for our pluggable database, it will appear in the SQL Developer connection window as well. But first, I want to show you something here. As you can see, the data that you need to type in the basic connection type is already written here: localhost, port, and the ORCL. So what we need to do here is just copy that entry and paste below it and replace the name with the ORCL PDB and the service name with ORCL PDB again. Save it and close it. That's it. Now I need to close this new connection window and reopen it. And write the name HR, username HR, password HR, and connection type is TNS. And let's click on the network alias drop-down list. As you can see, now we have our entry here, ORCL PDB. So I select it and click on Test. Perfect. As you can see, the status is success. So if you did not save the HR before, you can save this connection. Before connecting to the database, we need to do something important here. As you know, in the multi-tenant architecture of the Oracle database, there are one container database and pluggable ones. So each database has its own users, and so each database has SYS and system users. I mean both container and pluggable databases. Even if these users are common users, they cannot easily perform some operations for the users that reside in the pluggable databases while they are connected to the container. I don't want to go further not to confuse you, but in order to perform some operations easily in your pluggable database with the SYS and system users, you need to connect with these users to that pluggable database instead of the container. So, to see the properties of these users' connections, you can easily click on their names on the top left corner of that window. So, let's select the system user first. As you can see, its network alias is ORCL. We know that it is the name of the container database. So, let's now change it to the pluggable database ORCL PDB. And test it. As you can see, it can also connect to our pluggable database without any problem. So let's save it. And select the SYS user now, and do the same thing for that user. And save it. Great! In this way, when you connect with the SYS or the system users to perform some operations, like granting some privileges to the HR user, you will not have any problem. Because in this way, the SYS and the system users will also connect to the same pluggable database with the HR user. Alright, now let's close our new database connection window. So, how can we connect to the database within the SQL Developer? There are two ways to connect to the database. The first one is, you can right-click on the connection that you want to connect and select the Connect option. As you can see, our connection has opened successfully. If you see a plug image on the database icon here, that means it is connected. And a new blank worksheet is opened to type our codes. But if you want to open more than one worksheet, this way will not work. Let's right-click again. As you can see, the Connect option is disabled since it is already connected. So the other way is we can click on this green icon here. Unlike the previous one, this one is for creating a new worksheet. If you are not connected, it also makes you connected. So now let's click on it. As you can see, this window lets us select which connection to use in this worksheet, because you can run your code with only one connection. So I select HR here and click on OK button. Perfect. Now we connected to the database with the HR user, and we have a blank worksheet that we can type in and run our codes. So, how do we run our queries? First of all, let's write a query. What I will write here is not really important. If you are new to SQL, don't worry, you will learn what this means and much more throughout the course. For now, just write exactly the same and try to focus on what I do here. So I write select star from employees. Great. Now, basically, there are three ways to run a query in the SQL Developer. The first one is you can click on the Run button here. As you can see, when we execute this query, the result is displayed in the query result area. This is our data in the employees table. Now let's close the query result window. The second way is by pressing the Ctrl plus Enter buttons together. As you can see, our result is returned again. The third one is you can press the F9 button on your keyboard. As you can see, there is no difference among these ways. In every run, even though we approached it differently, we end up with the same result. If you did everything correctly, now you are ready to work with the SQL Developer. There are a lot of properties of the SQL Developer. You will see most of them in our lectures when I use them. What I showed in this lecture is for successfully configuring your SQL Developer tool for the first use. You will see other useful features of this tool throughout the course, and you will be able to use it confidently. So this is the end of this lecture. See you in the next lesson.